The opening round of the 2020 Formula One calendar is here, and the fans have gathered in Melbourne, Australia's beautiful Albert Park for the Australian Grand Prix. And as the green lights came on to signal the start of free practice 1 on Thursday, the very first car to emerge from the garage was none other than Daniel Haight in the gold, black, and orange Bengal F1 Racing Honda, to the sound of fans cheering and clapping as he was turning his very first lap. And as the rest of the cars took to the track, including the second Bengal F1 race car piloted by Mick Schumacher, many questions were being circulated throughout the fan community, social media, as well as a plethora of media outlets covering Formula One. Some of the questions were: how will the battles play out this year between Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull, and the teams within the midfield pecking order? How will Bengal F1 Racing perform in their first race? And where will they factor in the Constructors' Championship come crunch time? As free practice 1 came to a close, the narrative completely turned on its head as, surprisingly, Daniel took the top spot on the timesheets with a 1:25.6, almost 3 seconds clear of Max Verstappen in the Red Bull, Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes, and almost 3.5 seconds clear of the 2 Ferrari cars of Sebastian Vettel and Charles Leclerc. That had the other team principals like Toto Wolff and Christian Horner scratching their heads in trying to figure out how he was able to be that quick. As free practice 2 rolled on later in the day, many people were being skeptical that the time Daniel put up in session 1 was mainly in part due to the top teams running on a slower compound of tires and not going all out from the get-go. But Daniel soon silenced his critics once again for a while when he again set the best time with a 1:25.8, and surprisingly, it was on the only lap that he ran in the session. However, the gap was just a little over a second to Verstappen and a second and a half to Leclerc, as all 3 drivers ran the soft compound to set their best times. When asked by the media why he only turned in 1 lap, Daniel explained that it was part of his overall plan to keep the wear and tear on his engine parts and gearbox as low as possible per the race weekend. In Friday's free practice 3, Daniel put all of his critics to bed as he once again set the best time of the session with a 1:25.9, 1.3 seconds clear of the second Mercedes of Valtteri Bottas, and 1.6 seconds ahead of, again, Max Verstappen. And again, the question becomes, can Daniel ride the wave of momentum heading into qualifying on Saturday and make more of his Formula One history?
Hey guys, Chicago Man 2008 here, and welcome back to my Formula One 2020 My Team Karim mode. This is officially episode 1, and if you guys did miss the so-called prologue, or part 0, the preseason build to the start of the first season, then be sure to go check that out before you see this one. But today is where we kick things off towards our road to becoming a double champion in the drivers and constructors. And we'll start things here in the Team Data Center, and this is our main hub during a Grand Prix weekend. As you saw in the intro portion of the video, my car was looking pretty good on the soft compound of tires as I topped all 3 practice sessions in the 1 minute 25 second bracket. Before we move into qualifying, I want to let you know right off the bat that I'm using a controller for this series because I don't have enough space in my apartment for a full racing sim rig. Also, I'm going to show you what you can do in the data center. Just like in the HQ, we can view any messages that our support characters send us, whether it be track info, development comparisons, or tips that your engineer may provide to getting around the track. Over in the Rivalries tab on the Personal section, you can view who you are currently in a rivalry with. Right now, we don't currently have one, but eventually we'll be able to pick one as the season progresses. The Driver Details tab is where you can view your total accumulated stats throughout your career. We have the R&D section as before from the HQ side of things, and one thing to note is that during the 3 practice sessions, not only can you earn resource points, your teammate can also earn resource points for your team as well. And as you can see, we have just a little over 1,800 points to spend, and I'm going to purchase some more upgrades for the car. At this point, not only was I thinking about trying to get the car to handle the best when we get to Monaco, but also about maybe trying to extend the life of the engine and gearbox components, so either myself or Mick won't have to take grid penalties as much. In the end, I decided to go ahead and purchase a level 1 gearbox durability upgrade. Now keep in mind that in this game, durability upgrades can now fail, whereas F1 2017 and 2018, they would come in with no chance of failure. If this one doesn't fail, it will come in after the Vietnam Grand Prix. After that, I also decided to take a chance and purchase a major weight reduction upgrade, and if that doesn't fail, it too will come in after the Vietnam Grand Prix. We also have the power unit section, and after checking the wear of the current components and gearbox, we are all green and good to go. And here we go with our very first qualifying session, and we'll pick up my run coming down the backstretch heading towards turn 13. And up ahead of me is Mick Schumacher, my teammate, and in front of both of us is Esteban Ocon in the Renault. I suspect that both of them are also on their flying laps. Nice lead through 14, and I took a look at Mick on the inside going into 15, but decided to stay behind him and use my teammate as sort of a horse and carriage down the start-finish straight. Out of turn 16, up through the gears, DRS open, oh so close to Mick's diffuser. Across the line, and it's a 125.264, which puts me on top of the board ahead of Lewis Hamilton by a little over 0.2 of a second. And as Q1 ends, my time was good enough to keep me in first, Hamilton second, and Charles Leclerc in third, and he was just under a tenth from grabbing second in the session, and look at that! The top 7 from me down to Max Verstappen were covered by less than 0.9 of a second. Also, hats off to Lando Norris in the McLaren as he ended up tying Verstappen on the same lap time with a 126.144. In fact, both Norris and Carlos Sainz made it into the top 10 of Q1, so that could possibly be a spanner in the works. As we head into Q2 and the sun begins to fade here in Melbourne, I decided to take a shot at trying to get into Q3 on a set of mediums. If I do, then that would set me up for a possible one-stop strategy come race time. Down the backstretch again, heading into turn 13, and this time I have ample amount of clean air in front of me. At this point, I was feeling really good with how the car was handling through all phases of cornering, as you see it right here as it nailed the apex of turn 15. And as I was coming out of turn 16, Lewis Hamilton goes quickest with a 125.439, DRS open across the line, and I once again go top of the board with a 125.391. And wow, look at those times right there. 0.02 of a second separates the Aussie man Daniel Ricciardo in the Renault, and Lando Norris and also Sainz just managed to get into Q3 by 0.12 of a second over Ocon. More importantly, I was the only one that made it into the top 10 shootout on a set of mediums, while Hamilton down to Sainz will be starting on the softs. Be interesting to see what strategies they'll be utilizing during the race. And as we go into the run for pole, I have 3 fresh sets of soft tires that I can utilize. That will put me in a very good position in case I need to make a second run. Let's ride on board for this run. And here I come down the start-finish straight, across the line, and I set an even better time with a 124.132 to take provisional pole. And I wasn't the only one to break into the 124s. Lewis Hamilton set a 124.902, and that got me worried a little bit that he could go out again to try and snatch pole away from me. As I was trying to select a fresh set of softs, the game wouldn't let me because there wasn't enough time, so I may have shot myself in the foot for advancing too far in time. But I saw that the set I was on only had 9% of wear on it, and I decided to take the risk and go out again to try and cover off Hamilton. We'll pick it up at the end of my second run after setting 2 purple sectors. Across the line, and no, it's not an improvement, but I still maintain pole position. My best time did hold, and what a way to make a statement in Formula 1. So in the end, it's myself on pole, Hamilton joining me on the front row, and you've got Max Verstappen splitting the 2 Ferraris of Vettel and Leclerc. Nice job to Sainz and Norris for locking out row 4 for McLaren, and the home man, Daniel Ricciardo, will be starting on row 5 with Sergio Perez in the Racing Point. My teammate, however, got knocked out in Q1 and will be starting 20th on row 10. But what a way to make a name for myself and for my team out of the gate. Now the question is, can I convert this pole into a win? Let's go to the grid and find out for the opening race of the season.
No more testing, no more practice. This is the real deal. And it's make or break here at Albert Park, home of the Australian Grand Prix since 1996. And home to round 1 of this year's Formula 1 World Championship. Just south of Melbourne's downtown business centre is the one and only Albert Park circuit. 3.3 miles of public roads, closed for the weekend of course, make for a bumpy circuit with little undulation. There are 16 corners around the lake and a couple of good passing opportunities here as well, thanks in part to the DRS zones into turns 1, 3 and 13. Can Mercedes start with victory in their bid to win a 7th consecutive Constructors' title? Could Ferrari or Red Bull establish an advantage early on? And with 22 cars on the grid, how quickly can the new team find their footing? Well, it's great to be back, Anthony Davidson. We've got a lot to talk about this year.
That's right, Crofty. It felt like a long winter, but it's good to finally be back. I have to think the usual suspects will battle it out at the front, but there are always going to be some teething problems early on in the season, so whoever can keep on top of their issues will have the advantage today.
As I mentioned earlier, we're up to 11 teams this season, with a new entry run by, well, of all things, an owner-driver. That's something we haven't seen in this sport since Hector Raback over 4 decades ago. So how are they looking so far?
It's hard to imagine how a small operation like that could survive in the ruthless world of Formula 1, and yet here they are, first ever race looking surprisingly strong. But there are no points for qualifying. Let's see how they fare in the Grand Prix proper.
Off the back of a fantastic qualifying session, it's time to see how our starting grid looks for today's race. The rookie lines up on pole position, and it's Lewis Hamilton alongside. Moving on to the rest of the grid, we have Bottas, Leclerc, Max Verstappen, and Vettel, Sainz, Norris, Ricciardo, and Sergio Perez, Ocon, Albon, Pierre Gasly, and Kvyat, Stroll, Raikkonen, Antonio Giovinazzi, and Kevin Magnussen, Grosjean, Russell, Latifi, and Mick Schumacher. It's almost time for those 5 red lights to go out. Then let's see who can prevail today.
First race of the season and you're on pole. Let's bring home a win today.
Alright then, here we are on the grid with only the safety car ahead of me, and as you saw on the grid sequence, Mick Schumacher will be starting in last place due to either changing 2 engine components after qualifying or a gearbox. So in a way, we're like the engine and the caboose. And taking a look at the strategy for the race today, we will indeed start on the mediums since that was the set that got us into Q3, and it will be a one-stop from the mediums onto a set of the white wall hard tires, while the others in the top 10 will be starting on the softs. I'm suspecting that some within the top 10 may try an aggressive 2-stop with either 2 sets of mediums or another set of softs and a set of mediums, while others may try to stretch their soft tire stint and go on to the hards. Lots to play for as it is the first race of the season with lots of unknowns and surprises awaiting us. So here we go to 5 red lights for the Australian Grand Prix, the opening round of the season from pole position. Lights are out and we are underway, and it's a good launch from me off the line. Good traction in the second part of the start phase as Bottas has a little look on my inside as we approach turn 1. Easy does it through there on the heavy starting fuel load. Through turn 2, and somehow we all made it through cleanly, and everyone is sliding in single file. Wow, that's about as clean of a start as we might see here, as I was expecting chaos at the start with everyone trying to jockey for position in turn 1, and maybe even a safety car. But boy was I wrong. And now that we're through the start of the race, I was starting to settle into a rhythm while trying my best to keep the gap to over a second, because I had a feeling that if Bottas or Leclerc kept it close or reeled me in little by little, either of the two would easily get me in a DRS zone. As we move forward a couple of laps, Leclerc is looking to make a move on Bottas on the outside approaching the high-speed chicane of turns 11 and 12. Can Leclerc do it? No! Bottas slams the door and breaks Leclerc's momentum. That was some nice defending there. Quick update on Schumacher, he's gotten around the two Williams cars of Latifi and Russell to get back to his original starting position of 20th. Moving on to lap number 8, and it is Bottas that is the first of the soft tire runners in the top 10 to come into the pit lane. Mercedes is probably gambling that I would react to Bottas pitting to try and cover him off and not lose track position, or they're trying to do an undercut on Leclerc so the gap between them would be larger after their initial stop. Either way, we're going to stick with this shot to see what compound will be going on the Silver Arrow, and it looks like it's another set of soft tires from that camera angle, so I can now confirm that Mercedes is going with a two-stop strategy on Bottas with his final stint on the mediums. One lap later, and Leclerc comes in for his stop, so he went one lap longer than Bottas on the softs. However, he was losing time to me and the Finn due to the tire wear kicking in. And what's the tire of choice for Leclerc? It's the hard tires, so Ferrari is employing a one-stop strategy for the Monegascan in the hopes of jumping Bottas when he has to make his second stop. And as my pit window draws closer, disaster struck the team! Mick Schumacher is out of the Australian Grand Prix! Let's see on a replay camera if we can find out what caused his retirement. He's coming down the back straight into turn 13. At the exit, it's a straight-up mechanical failure! So unlucky for the young German, as I am now the only one flying the flag for Bengal F1 Racing. On to lap 12, we're now coming in for our one and only stop this race onto the hards, and this will be the set that will be on till the end of the race. The big question now is, did I build a big enough gap to Bottas and Leclerc to maintain the lead after I come out the pit lane? The gap was around 24 seconds when I entered. On goes the hards, and that was an impressive stop, 1.9 seconds. That's how to get it done. Up to speed now and looking at the time gaps? Yes, I will maintain the lead by 1.6 seconds over Bottas after going through turns 1 and 2. Moving on to lap 16, past the halfway mark, and Bottas is coming in for his second stop. The gap to me when he came in was around 2.4 seconds, and he'll surrender second place to Leclerc, and the compound he'll be finishing the race on is the mediums. The question now is, can he charge his way through the field to get on the final step of the podium? The answer is yes, he can, as we fast forward to the final lap of the Grand Prix. Through the final two corners, and we'll come home to win our very first Formula One race as an owner-driver for Bengal F1 Racing in Australia. Let's go!
Fantastic drive, just fantastic. You deserved that race win.
A great race then, and a fantastic victory here at Albert Park. So Anthony, what made the difference out there today?
Well, time management probably played quite a large role in the outcome of this one. As ever, it's not just about speed, it's all about maintaining that speed consistently over a stint, over a race distance. So being able to keep up the lap times while still being smooth on the controls and gentle on the tyres, that's really where the race was won today.
Here comes your top three making their way down to the podium for what can only be described as a fantastic day for Formula One.
All I can say after that race is, wow, what a dream start to the season. First in all three practice sessions, first in all three phases of qualifying, pole position, fastest lap, and to cap it all off with the race win. I was worried that I was going to suffer the same fate that Mick Schumacher did, but we pulled through and got maximum points on the day, which is 26. Also, great job to the two McLaren drivers of Carlos Sainz and Lando Norris for finishing in the top 10, as well as Daniel Ricciardo for holding off his teammate Esteban Ocon to finish in the final points paying position in his home race. And that's how things look in the drivers' standings, as this is the opening round of a very young season, and in the constructors, Mercedes lead us by 1 point since both Bottas and Hamilton scored more combined points than me, and Ferrari is in third, 4 points behind us. But again, it's still early days, and anything can happen in the next 21 rounds. And as we round off this episode, me and Schumacher will gain personal reputation, and I will now go to Acclaim Level 2 thanks to that win, and both of us will boost our Team Acclaim up by 12% to take us up to Team Acclaim Level 3. And because of that, our weekly income from our main sponsor and sponsors that we will sign in the future will increase. Plus, we'll bring some money in to add to the bank. So guys, if you did enjoy watching me get my very first win as an owner-driver, please smash that like button, get subscribed, and turn on the notification bell so that you don't miss any new videos coming out. Until next time, this is Chicago Man 2008, and I'll see you in Bahrain.